Part 1. The morning light came through the bathroom window, at an angle I had memorized over 32 years of marriage. That particular slant of gold that meant it was just past 7, that summer was finally arriving, that my wife Eleanor would be standing at the sink with her reading glasses perched on her nose, applying the same modest makeup she had worn since I first met her at a church fundraiser when we were both still young enough to believe the world rewarded kindness. But when I opened that bathroom door on the morning of my son's wedding, everything I thought I understood about our family shattered in a single breath. Eleanor stood frozen before the mirror. Her shoulders were bare above her robe, trembling almost imperceptibly, and her head, her beautiful head, that I had watched silver gradually over our decades together, hair that she brushed 100 strokes each night, hair that our granddaughter loved to braid, hair that Eleanor called her one vanity was gone, not cut, not trimmed, shaved. Patches of scalp showed through uneven stubble. Clumps of silver lay scattered across the white tile floor, like the aftermath of something violent. I could not speak. I could not move. And then I heard the laughter. It came from the hallway behind me. I pitched theatrical, the kind of laughter designed to perform rather than express genuine amusement. I turned slowly, my body moving through air that had become thick as water. And there stood Brianna, my son's fiancée, holding her phone at arm's length, with the camera facing us. "Oh my God, Richard, your face," she shrieked. "This is amazing. The before and after is going to break the internet." I stared at her. 26 years old, blonde hair professionally styled for the wedding later that day, wearing a silk robe with bride embroidered across the back in gold thread. She was still filming. "Turn that off," I said. My voice came out quiet, almost gentle. I have learned over many years that the quieter I speak when I am angry, the more people should worry. Brianna's smile flickered, but she kept recording. "Come on, it's just content." Eleanor agreed to it. "Didn't you, Mum?" I looked back at my wife. Eleanor had not moved. She had not spoken. Her hands gripped the edge of the sink so tightly her knuckles had gone white, and in the mirror's reflection, I could see her face, expressionless, empty, somewhere far away from this bathroom and this morning and this violation. "Eleanor," I said softly, "did you agree to this?" A long pause. Then, in a voice I barely recognized, she said it was for a surprise. "For the video," she said, "the hair would grow back. But did you agree to have your head shaved?" Silence. That silence told me everything. Brianna lowered her phone slightly. "Okay." Well, she was half asleep. But she didn't say no, and honestly, it's not a big deal. Hair grows back. This is going to get like 1 million views. Do you know how many followers I could gain from this? This is the kind of content that changes careers. I walked past her without another word. I went downstairs to the kitchen, poured myself a cup of coffee, sat at the table where I had eaten breakfast for 3 decades, and I began to think, this is where I need to tell you about the months that led to this moment. Because what Brianna did that morning did not happen in isolation. It was the culmination of something I had watched building since my son Marcus brought her home for the first time. 18 months before this wedding day, and I had stayed silent then, too, watching, waiting, hoping I was wrong about the things I was beginning to see. Marcus was our only child. Eleanor and I had wanted more, but life decided otherwise, and we poured all of our love into this one son, who grew into a kind and trusting man. Perhaps too trusting. Marcus saw the good in everyone, which I considered a virtue until I realized how easily such virtue could be exploited. He met Brianna at a marketing conference. She was working as a content creator a term. I had to ask him to explain building what she called her personal brand across various social media platforms. She had, at the time, somewhere around 50,000 followers on her primary account. She posted videos of herself trying products, sharing opinions, documenting her daily life with a cheerfulness that seemed, to my aging eyes, somewhat performed. But Marcus was enchanted. He called her ambitious, creative, entrepreneurial. He admired how hard she worked to build her audience, how many hours she spent editing videos and responding to comments and staying relevant in what he described as an extremely competitive space. I wanted to like her. I truly did. For my son's happiness, I was prepared to embrace almost anyone he chose. But from that very first dinner at our home, something about Brianna set my instincts on edge, that it was not any single thing. It was an accumulation of small moments. The way she photographed every dish Eleanor prepared before anyone could eat, sometimes asking Eleanor to rearrange the plates for better lighting, The way she positioned Marcus and herself for couples photos throughout the evening, coaching him on angles and expressions. The way she steered every conversation back to herself. Her channel, her growth metrics, her upcoming collaborations, and most troublingly, the way she spoke to Eleanor. My wife has always been a gentle woman, soft-spoken, accommodating, eager to make others comfortable. Brianna seemed to sense this gentleness and interpret it as weakness. She began, gradually, to push against Eleanor's boundaries in ways so subtle that calling them out would have made me seem paranoid. She would make small comments about Eleanor's appearance, suggestions framed as helpfulness, that Eleanor's hair was looking a bit dull. Had she considered using the volumizing shampoo Brianna was partnering with? That Eleanor's clothes were lovely but perhaps a bit dated. Brianna could take her shopping somewhere more modern. That Eleanor might want to consider some skincare products to address those fine lines. Brianna had affiliate codes that could get her a discount. Eleanor laughed these comments off. She told me I was being protective. She said Brianna was just enthusiastic about these things because of her job, and that the girl meant well. But I saw the way Eleanor began to look at herself differently after Brianna's visits. I noticed her studying her reflection with new criticism, touching the silver in her hair as though it had become something to be ashamed of, rather than evidence of a life well lived. The engagement came 6 months before the wedding. Marcus proposed during what Brianna called a destination content trip to Santorini, and of course the entire proposal was filmed from multiple angles and posted across all her platforms. I watched the video, Marcus on one knee, Brianna performing surprise, the sunset perfectly positioned behind them. The comments were rapturous. So romantic, relationship goals. I wish my boyfriend would do this. I remember thinking, she has taught him that love should be performed rather than lived. And I said nothing. The wedding planning began almost immediately, and it quickly became apparent that this event would not be a family celebration, but rather a content production. Every decision was filtered through the question of how it would photograph, how it would film, what angle would capture the best lighting, which vendors would provide the most impressive backdrops. Eleanor tried to participate. She offered to help address invitations, to assist with flower selection, to be involved in the traditional ways mothers of the groom might contribute. But Brianna made clear, with increasing bluntness, that Eleanor's involvement was not really welcome. No offense, Mom, but your aesthetic is kind of different from what we're going for, Brianna said one afternoon, when Eleanor suggested a florist she had used for decades. This wedding needs to look a certain way for the content. I have a very specific brand identity, and everything needs to align. Mom. She had started calling Eleanor Mom within weeks of the engagement, though the familiarity felt less like affection and more like ownership. Eleanor accepted the title graciously. I watched her absorb the rejection of her help with a small nod, telling Brianna she understood completely, that she was sure everything would be beautiful. That night, I found Eleanor crying quietly in our bedroom. She said she was being silly, that she just wanted to feel useful, that she knew she was old-fashioned and probably out of touch with how young people did things now. I held her and said nothing about the anger that was building in my chest like pressure. In a sealed container. The wedding was scheduled for late June. A venue had been booked, a renovated barn that had been featured in several bridal magazines and was apparently very popular for photographs. 300 guests would attend. A videography team would document every moment for content across multiple platforms. Brianna spoke of the event as though it were a product launch rather than a marriage. In the weeks before the wedding, Brianna's content began to focus increasingly on Eleanor. She started filming what she called in-law bonding videos, supposedly heartwarming content showing herself and her future mother-in-law spending time together. But something about these videos unsettled me. In each one, Brianna was positioned as the patient, modern young woman graciously tolerating the quirks of her out-of-touch future mother-in-law. She filmed Eleanor's confused reaction to being asked to try on trendy clothes. She filmed Eleanor's awkward attempt to do a popular dance. She filmed Eleanor struggling to understand social media terminology, and in the comments beneath each video, people laughed. Not cruelly, perhaps, but they laughed at my wife. They found her confusion entertaining. They shared the videos because it was funny to watch an older woman not understand the modern world. Eleanor told me she did not mind. She said it was harmless, that Brianna was just including her, that at least she was being involved in some way. But I noticed that my wife began to dread the visits. She would ask me when Brianna was coming, and there was something in her voice that sounded less like anticipation and more like bracing. I still said nothing. I was waiting. I have learned, in my years of business and life, that speaking too soon often wastes words. I wanted to understand the full shape of what was happening before I responded. 2 weeks before the wedding, Brianna posted a video that crossed a line I did not know existed. The format was something called a transformation challenge. Brianna had been tagged by another content creator to participate, and the premise was simple: give someone an unsuspecting makeover and film their reaction. The video opened with Brianna whispering conspiratorially to the camera about her plan. "So I'm going to surprise my mother-in-law with a complete makeover," she said, grinning. "She has literally the most boring style ever. I love her, but she dresses like she's going to a PTA meeting from 1995. So I'm going to ambush her and take her to get her hair and makeup done, and we'll see if we can bring her into this decade." The rest of the video showed exactly that. Brianna arriving at our home unannounced with a camera crew. Eleanor's startled face as she opened the door. The salon visit, where stylists cut and colored Eleanor's hair, while Eleanor sat looking uncertain, saying she was not sure, saying maybe this was too much, while Brianna waved her concerns away with the dismissive confidence of someone who had never been told no. The final reveal showed Eleanor with shortened, highlighted hair that made her look like she was trying to be someone she was not. The comments called it an improvement. Finally, I watched Eleanor touch her altered hair for days afterward. She did not complain. She said it was fine, that she could get used to it, that Brianna had meant well, but she stopped brushing her hair 100 strokes each night. There was not enough left to brush. That video received 800,000 views. It was Brianna's most successful content to date, and I saw something shift in her eyes when she showed us the numbers of hunger. A recognition that my wife's discomfort could be converted into metrics that advanced her career. I knew then what was coming, not the specifics, but the trajectory. Brianna had found a formula that worked, and she would push it further. She would continue to use my wife as a prop in her performance of relatability, and she would escalate, because the internet always demands escalation. What delights an audience today becomes ordinary tomorrow. The only way to maintain attention is to push boundaries that should not be pushed. I considered speaking to Marcus. I considered confronting Brianna directly. I considered many courses of action in those final 2 weeks before the wedding, but I chose patience instead. I chose to wait, because I knew that whatever intervention I made would be framed as the overprotective father-in-law, who did not understand modern culture, who was threatened by a successful young woman, who was trying to control his son's relationship. So I waited. I watched, and on the morning of the wedding, I opened that bathroom door and found exactly what I had been dreading. The hours after my discovery moved with the strange elasticity of crisis. Brianna had disappeared back to the bridal suite, satisfied with her footage, already imagining the engagement metrics. I sat with Eleanor in our bedroom while she stared at herself in the mirror, running her palm over the stubble that remained of her hair. She came in while I was sleeping. Eleanor said finally, "I take those pills now, for my back. They make me groggy in the mornings." I thought I was dreaming. I heard the buzzing, and I felt something on my head, and by the time I understood what was happening, "Why didn't you scream? Why didn't you stop her?" Eleanor looked at me with an expression that broke something inside my chest. "Because Marcus loves her. Because the wedding is today. Because I didn't want to ruin everything." She paused. "Because I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe this is just how things are done now. Maybe I really am just an old woman who doesn't understand." I took her hand. "You are not old. You are not out of touch. What she did to you was assault." "Richard, please, don't say that. Don't make this worse than it is. It cannot be worse than it is. She shaved your head while you were incapacitated. She filmed it without your genuine consent. She violated you in your own home. And she did it because she believes your humiliation is worth trading for internet attention." Eleanor began to cry then, not loudly, not dramatically, but with the quiet, exhausted tears of someone who has been holding too much in for too long. I held her and made a decision. I would not confront Brianna before the wedding. I would not tell Marcus what had happened. I would not give Brianna the satisfaction of a dramatic confrontation that she could frame as the villain father-in-law trying to destroy her special day. Instead, I would wait. I would let the wedding happen. I would let her have her moment, her content, her illusion of victory, and then I would respond in a way she would never see coming. This might sound cold, calculating. Perhaps it was. But I have learned that immediate emotional reactions, however justified, often achieve less than patient, strategic responses. Brianna expected outrage. She expected a scene. She expected me to give her more content. The angry father-in-law creating wedding day drama. I would not give her that narrative. I would give her something else entirely. The wedding itself became a performance of normalcy that required every ounce of control I possessed. Eleanor wore a beautiful headscarf that her sister helped her style, explaining to guests who asked that she had decided to try a new look for the summer. She smiled. She posed for photographs. She played the role of happy mother-in-law, while her daughter-in-law documented every moment for the audience that would later watch my wife's humiliation go viral. Marcus noticed something was wrong. I could see it in the way he looked at his mother, the small furrow between his brows, but he was swept up in the logistics of the day, the photographs, the timeline, the ceremonies of becoming a husband. I did not blame him for missing the full picture. I had raised him to trust people, and that trust was being weaponized against him. Brianna was radiant. That is the only word for it. She glowed with the particular satisfaction of someone who believes they have gotten away with something. She posed, she laughed, she directed the videographers to capture specific moments that would perform well online. When she stood next to Eleanor for the formal family photographs, I watched her suppress a smirk. She thought she had one. She thought that my silence meant acquiescence. She thought that by the time the video went live, it would be too late. The content would exist, the views would accumulate, and any objection would seem like the sour complaints of people who simply did not understand how success worked in the modern world. I let her believe this. I smiled in the photographs. I gave a brief, warm toast to the happy couple. I danced with Eleanor during the parent dances, holding her close, feeling her body tremble slightly against mine. "What are you going to do?" she whispered. "Nothing yet," I said, "but something is coming. I need you to trust me." "I trust you," she said. "I have always trusted you." The reception wound down in the early hours of the morning. Guests departed, the venue began its cleanup, and the newlyweds retreated to their hotel suite to prepare for a honeymoon that would, I knew, be documented across every platform available. Eleanor and I drove home in silence. I helped her remove her headscarf and prepare for bed, and I lay beside her in the darkness, thinking about the shape of what would come next. The video went live 3 days later. Brianna edited it with professional precision. It opened with her whispering to the camera about her brilliant prank idea. How funny it would be to give her mother-in-law a surprise wedding day makeover while she slept. The footage showed her creeping into our bathroom in the pre-dawn darkness, Eleanor's sleeping form visible in the bedroom behind her. It showed the electric razor, a heavy-duty model clearly chosen for maximum effect. It showed Brianna's excitement as she positioned herself behind my sleeping wife, as she brought the razor to Eleanor's head, as she began to shave. Eleanor's confused awakening was documented in detail, her groggy voice asking what was happening, her dawning realization, the moment she understood and went completely still, that moment of violation, that would haunt me for years, captured forever and posted for strangers to consume. The video ended with the bathroom confrontation I had witnessed. My face, stunned and silent, Eleanor's frozen form before the mirror, Brianna's triumphant laughter. A title card appeared, "Mother-in-law Transformation Prank." Wait for her reaction, followed by Brianna's handles across every platform. Within 48 hours, the video had been viewed 12 million times. Part 2. The comments were a landscape I had never imagined. Thousands upon thousands of responses, dividing roughly into camps that either found the prank hilarious or recognized it as the violation it truly was. "Oh my God, this is so mean, but I can't stop laughing," wrote someone called Sarah. "This isn't a prank, this is assault. Someone needs to press charges," wrote another user named Justice Watcher. The father-in-law's face. "He's going to murder her. Lamau, that poor woman. You can see her This isn't content, this is abuse documentation." The debate raged across platforms. Brianna had achieved exactly what she wanted: engagement, controversy, attention. She responded to the criticism with a series of follow-up videos defending herself. Eleanor had agreed. She claimed it was just hair. People were overreacting. The haters were just jealous of her success. Eleanor refused to watch any of it. She stayed in our bedroom mostly, emerging for meals, speaking little. Her hair was beginning to grow back in uneven patches, and I noticed she avoided mirrors entirely. Something in her had dimmed. That gentle brightness I had loved for over 3 decades seemed to be retreating somewhere. I could not reach. Marcus called me 5 days after the video went viral. He sounded confused, concerned, caught between loyalty to his new wife and the growing suspicion that something terrible had happened. "Dad, I don't understand what's going on. Brianna says Mom agreed to everything, but Mom won't talk to me, and people online are saying we should be arrested. What actually happened?" I chose my words carefully. "Your mother did not agree to have her head shaved. She was given no meaningful consent. She was half asleep from medication, and by the time she understood what was happening, it was too late. Your wife filmed the entire thing and published it for millions of strangers to watch." A long silence. "Brianna said Mom was in on it. She said it was a collaboration." "Then Brianna lied to you." "I was there, Marcus. I saw your mother's face. I saw her reaction. That was not the face of someone who had agreed to anything." Another silence, longer this time. "I don't know what to believe." "Then believe your mother. Ask her yourself. But understand that she will probably minimize what happened because she does not want to damage your marriage. She will put your happiness above her own dignity because that is who she is. It is your choice whether to exploit that kindness or protect her from people who would." I ended the call before he could respond. I had given him the information he needed. What he did with it was his decision, and I had learned long ago that I could not control my adult son's choices, only provide him with truth and hope he recognized it. Meanwhile, I had begun my own response to what Brianna had done. I should explain something about my background. I spent most of my career in corporate consulting, specializing in crisis management and reputation recovery. I helped companies navigate scandals, rebuild public trust, and when necessary hold accountable those who had violated ethical boundaries. I had seen how quickly internet attention could shift, how today's hero could become tomorrow's villain, and how carefully constructed personas could collapse under the weight of exposed truth. Brianna had built her brand on a particular image: relatable, fun-loving, genuine. She presented herself as an authentic voice in a sea of manufactured influences. Her audience believed they knew her. They believed she was kind beneath the entertainment, that her content came from a place of connection rather than calculation. I had access to resources Brianna could not have imagined. Former colleagues who specialized in digital investigation, contacts at publications that covered influencer culture, lawyers who understood the evolving landscape of online consent and privacy rights. I began making calls. Within 2 weeks, I had assembled a comprehensive picture of Brianna's history that extended far beyond what her carefully curated content revealed. There were the former friends who had been discarded after serving their purpose for her channel, a college roommate who had been filmed during a vulnerable moment without consent, the footage used to mock her weight gain after a difficult breakup, a former boyfriend whose struggles with anxiety had been documented and shared as content about dating someone with mental health issues. There were the sponsorship deals built on misleading claims, products she endorsed without disclosure that she had never actually used, a skincare line she promoted as transformative while privately acknowledging in messages to friends that it had given her a rash, a charity collaboration where most of the donated funds had been diverted to, administrative costs that somehow included a vacation to Bali, and there were the patterns I found most damning: the consistent escalation, the repeated targeting of people who were unlikely to fight back, previous pranks that had pushed boundaries and been defended as harmless fun, a trajectory that led inevitably to a sleeping woman in a bathroom, an electric razor, and the belief that consent was simply an obstacle to be managed, rather than a right to be respected. I compiled everything into a document. I organized the evidence chronologically. I verified sources and gathered corroborating statements, and then I reached out to a journalist I had known for many years, someone who covered the influencer industry with intelligence and integrity. "Richard," she said, when I explained what I had, "this is significant. If even half of what you're describing can be verified, this is a major story. It can all be verified. Every claim has documentation. But I want to be clear about something. This is not about destroying a young woman's career. This is about accountability. She violated my wife and filmed it for profit. The people whose opinions she values need to understand who she really is." The journalist was quiet for a moment. "The video of your wife has been controversial. The narrative is already splitting. If this comes out now, it will tip the balance significantly. That is the intention." I gave her 2 weeks. 2 weeks to verify what I had provided. to reach out for comment, to construct the story properly. During that time, I watched Brianna's engagement metrics carefully. Her follower count had surged after the viral video, additional 300,000 across platforms. She was fielding interview requests. Brands were reaching out for potential partnerships. She had turned my wife's humiliation into the biggest opportunity of her career. But the criticism had not disappeared. Beneath every video, in every comment section, there were voices calling out what she had done. And I noticed that Brianna was responding to these critics with increasing defensiveness, making statements that contradicted her earlier claims, creating the kind of inconsistent record that unravels credibility. Marcus came to visit, alone. At the end of those 2 weeks, he sat in our living room looking like a man who had not slept properly in days. "I talked to Mom," he said. "Really talked. She told me what happened. Not the version Brianna gave me, the real version. I waited, Dad. I don't know what to do. Brianna is my wife. We just got married. But what she did..." He put his head in his hands. "How did I not see this? How did I miss who she really was? You saw what she wanted you to see. That is not a character flaw in you, it is a manipulation strategy in her. The question now is what you choose to do with the truth. She says everyone is overreacting. She says this is just cancel culture, that people want to tear down successful women. She says I need to support her. And what do you believe?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "I believe she hurt Mom badly. I believe she knew what she was doing was wrong and did it anyway. I believe she cares more about her follower count than she does about the people in her life." He looked up at me. "I believe I made a terrible mistake." I nodded slowly. "Then the next question is, what you do about that belief." The article published 2 days later. It was comprehensive, devastating, and meticulously sourced. The journalist had done her job with precision, and the result was a portrait of Brianna that stripped away every layer of manufactured authenticity. The headline read, "The Cruel Reality Behind Viral Influencers' Prank Empire." The story opened with the video of Eleanor, contextualizing it, not as an isolated incident, but as the culmination of a pattern. Previous victims spoke on the record. Former collaborators described her calculating approach to content creation. Industry insiders analyzed her business practices, and throughout, a picture emerged of someone who had built success by systematically exploiting people who trusted her. I had provided documentation showing that Eleanor had been under the influence of prescription medication at the time of the shaving. I had provided my own statement describing what I witnessed, and I had provided evidence showing that Brianna had purchased the specific razor days in advance, had researched how to shave someone's head quickly, and had planned the entire event for maximum content, impact, or contradicting her claim that it was a spontaneous prank gone wrong. The article spread with the same velocity as the original viral video. Within hours, the narrative surrounding Brianna had transformed completely. The comments that had defended her evaporated, replaced by a unified chorus of outrage. Sponsorships began announcing terminations. Platforms issued statements about reviewing her content for policy violations. The same audience that had amplified her success now turned against her, with the collective fury of people who felt deceived. I watched the numbers decline in reach, followers leaving by the thousands, engagement metrics collapsing, comment sections filling with screenshots from the article, with quotes from victims, with condemnations from people who had once admired her. By the end of the first day, she had lost over 100,000 followers. By the end of the first week, she had lost nearly all of her major sponsorships. By the end of the second week, she was facing formal complaints filed with platform trust and safety teams, potential legal action from multiple parties, and the complete collapse of the career she had built on other people's dignity. And then she came to our house. It was a Sunday morning, quiet, Eleanor and I having coffee in the kitchen. The doorbell rang with the frantic persistence of someone who was not prepared to wait. I opened it to find Brianna standing on our porch, her face swollen from crying, her carefully maintained appearance disheveled. "You did this," she said. "You destroyed everything." I stepped onto the porch and closed the door behind me. "Come inside. We should have this conversation properly." She followed me into the living room. Eleanor emerged from the kitchen, saw who had arrived, and went very still. The two women faced each other across our modest furniture, my wife with her hair still growing back in uneven patches, Brianna with mascara tracking down her cheeks. "I lost everything," Brianna said. "My sponsors, my partnerships, my audience. People are sending me death threats." I can't leave my apartment without being recognized and harassed. My career is over. I sat down in my usual chair. What did you expect would happen? I expected it to blow over. These things always blow over. People get outraged for a week, and then they move on to the next thing. That's how the internet works. But someone, she looked at me with sudden understanding, someone made sure it didn't blow over. Someone gave them ammunition. I gave them truth. I said, documentation of what you have done to people over years of building your brand, evidence of who you actually are beneath the performance. All I did was ensure that the people whose opinion you valued had access to accurate information. Brianna turned to Eleanor. I never meant to hurt you. It was supposed to be funny. Everyone was supposed to laugh, and then we'd move on, and it would just be content. I didn't understand. You didn't want to understand, Eleanor said quietly. Her voice was steady, stronger than I had heard it in weeks. You knew exactly what you were doing. You saw me as an opportunity, an older woman who wouldn't fight back, who would let herself be humiliated because she didn't want to cause problems for her son's marriage. You counted on my kindness as cover for your cruelty. That's not. You came into my home while I was sleeping. You put your hands on my body without my permission. You filmed me at my most vulnerable and published it for millions of strangers to see, and you called it content. Eleanor's voice broke slightly, but she continued. I have had strangers recognize me in grocery stores. People have taken photos of me without asking. Comments have been made about my appearance, my age, my body, my dignity. You took something from me that I cannot get back, and you did it deliberately. And you expected me to simply accept it because fighting back would have been inconvenient for you. Brianna was crying again now, but there was something different about the tears. They seemed less like grief and more like the frustrated tears of someone who is not getting what she wanted. Where is Marcus? She asked suddenly. I need to talk to Marcus. He needs to help me fix this. I exchanged a look with Eleanor. Marcus moved back home 3 days ago, I said. He's staying in his old room while he considers his options. The shock on Brianna's face was genuine. He left me. He is taking time to think. Something you might consider doing as well. But we just got married. You can't. Just the wedding cost $40,000. The honeymoon. The deposits. This is insane. This is completely insane. People cannot just decide to end a marriage because of bad publicity. That is not why Marcus is reconsidering your marriage, I said. He is reconsidering because he has realized that the woman he married is not the woman she pretended to be. He is reconsidering because he has watched his mother suffer and seen how little remorse you feel for causing that suffering. He is reconsidering because he has finally understood that your love for him was always secondary to your love for the attention he could help you generate. Brianna stood abruptly. This is your fault. You manipulated him. You turned him against me. No, Eleanor said. You turned him against yourself. We simply stopped protecting you from the consequences of your own choices. There was a long moment of silence. Brianna looked between us, and I saw something shift in her expression, a calculation, an assessment of whether there was any angle left to work, any leverage remaining. If Marcus leaves me, I will tell everyone it was your family's fault. I'll make content about how controlling you are, how you never accepted me, how you drove us apart. I nodded calmly. You are welcome to try, but I would recommend considering your current credibility before embarking on another narrative that contradicts verifiable evidence. The journalist who covered your story still has my contact information. She seemed quite interested in anything you might say publicly. The threat hung in the air. Brianna's face cycled through several expressions before settling on something that might have been defeat, or might have been the recognition that she had finally encountered consequences she could not charm or perform. Her way past Dot, she left without another word. I watched through the window as she got into her car and drove away, and I felt something release in my chest. Not joy exactly, but the satisfaction of completed work. The months that followed brought their own complications. Marcus struggled with the dissolution of his marriage. He blamed himself for not seeing the truth sooner, for bringing someone dangerous into our family, for the pain his mother had suffered. I spent many evenings sitting with him in our backyard, talking about the difference between trust and naivety, about how manipulation works best on good people, about the importance of not becoming cynical simply because he had been deceived. You believed in someone, I told him. That is not a weakness. The weakness would be never believing in anyone again. He filed for annulment on the grounds of fraud, specific that his consent to the marriage had been obtained through misrepresentation of Brianna's character and intentions. The legal process was complicated, but ultimately successful. By autumn, his marriage existed only as a cautionary tale and a set of documents in a filing cabinet. Eleanor healed more slowly. Her hair grew back, eventually covering the patches and returning to something close to its former appearance. But the invisible wounds took longer. She flinched when strangers looked at her in public. She declined invitations to events where photographs might be taken. She developed a wariness around technology, around cameras, around the mechanisms by which private moments could be transformed into public content. She also, eventually, spoke about what had happened. "I felt so stupid," she told me one night. Months later, "I let her treat me badly because I wanted Marcus to be happy. I ignored my own instincts because I didn't want to seem like the difficult mother. I made myself small so she could feel big, and I didn't understand until it was too late that my smallness was what she was counting on." "You were kind," I said. "She exploited that kindness. The moral failure belongs to her, not to you. But I should have said something. When she made those comments about my appearance, when she filmed me without asking, when she made me feel like I was wrong for being who I am, I should have pushed back. Perhaps, but you were trying to keep peace in your family. That is not shameful. It is a choice many good people make when confronted with someone who will weaponize conflict." Eleanor was quiet for a while. Then she said, "I think I want to talk about it, publicly, not for attention, but because maybe there are other people who have been through something similar, other people who have been used for content without their real consent. Maybe hearing someone else's story would help them understand they are not alone. I considered this. If you want to, I will support you completely, but you should be certain. Once you speak publicly, you cannot control how people respond. I know, but staying silent hasn't protected me." She took my silence and used it as evidence that what she did was acceptable. Maybe my voice could help establish that it wasn't. I reached across the space between us and took her hand. "Then speak, tell your truth, and know that whatever happens, I will be beside you." Eleanor's interview, published 6 months after the original incident, it was thoughtful, measured, focused not on revenge but on the experience of having personal boundaries violated for entertainment. She talked about the moment of waking to find someone shaving her head. She talked about the shame she felt watching herself be mocked online. She talked about the gradual process of reclaiming her dignity. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of messages from people who had experienced similar violations, not all involving physical intrusion, but many describing the particular pain of being used for content without meaningful consent. Eleanor's story became part of a larger conversation about boundaries in the age of constant documentation, about the difference between participating in someone's content and being exploited by it. She received invitations to speak at conferences. She declined most of them, but accepted a few that felt aligned with her values. She became, in her quiet way, an advocate for something she had not sought to represent: the right to exist, without being converted into entertainment for strangers. Brianna, meanwhile, faded from public attention with surprising speed. Her attempts to resurrect her career through redemption narratives failed to gain traction. Her audience had moved on to new creators, new dramas, new cycles of attention and outrage. Within a year, her platforms were essentially dormant. Her follower counts a fraction of their peak. Her influence reduced to the memories of people who had once believed in her manufactured authenticity. I saw her once, almost 2 years after the wedding that started everything. She was working at a marketing agency entry level. From what I understood, she walked past me on the street without recognition, her head down, her carefully cultivated confidence replaced by something smaller and more careful. I felt no satisfaction in her diminishment. I had wanted accountability, not destruction. I had wanted consequences that matched the harm she had caused, not cruelty for its own sake. Seeing her reduced to anonymity brought me no joy, only the complicated recognition that choices have outcomes, and that the internet's attention is as fickle in its forgetting as in its focus. Marcus remarried 3 years later. His new wife was nothing like Brianna: quiet, private, uninterested in documenting her life for public consumption. They had a small wedding with only family and close friends. No professional photography, no content strategy, just 2 people making promises to each other, without any audience beyond those who truly loved them. Eleanor cried during the ceremony, but they were good tears, healing tears, the tears of someone who had survived something terrible and emerged into a life that continued to hold beauty. That evening, after the guests had gone and the celebration had wound down, Eleanor and I sat together on our back porch. The summer evening was warm, the fireflies beginning their nightly performance, the sounds of our neighborhood settling into comfortable quiet. "Do you remember what you told me?" Eleanor asked. "That morning, after you found me in the bathroom, I told you many things that morning. You told me to trust you, that something was coming. You asked me to have faith that you would handle it." I remember. She reached over and took my hand. "Thank you for believing me, for taking it seriously, for not accepting what she tried to do to our family." I squeezed her hand gently. "Thank you for your patience, for trusting me when I asked you to wait. I know it was not easy." "No," she agreed. "It was not easy, but it was worth it." She paused, looking out at the darkening sky. "I think I understand something now that I didn't understand before." "What's that?" "That silence is not always weakness. Sometimes silence is just waiting for the right moment to speak. You taught me that." I turned to look at my wife, her silver hair fully returned now, longer than before, brushed each night with the attention she had given it for decades. She was beautiful in the fading light, beautiful in her resilience, beautiful in the quiet strength that had always been there but had needed this trial to fully reveal itself. "We survived something," I said, "and we survived it together." "Yes," Eleanor agreed, "we did." The fireflies continued their silent dance, the night continued its gentle arrival, and somewhere in the distance, the world continued its endless churn of attention and outrage and quickly forgotten scandals. But here, in this backyard, in this marriage, in this family that had been tested and had emerged intact, here, there was peace. That is the end of this story, but not the end of our lives. We continued forward, as people do. Eleanor's advocacy work grew into something meaningful. Marcus became a father, giving us grandchildren who know nothing of viral videos or internet outrage. I retired from consulting and found new purposes in quieter pursuits. And sometimes, late at night, I think about Brianna, not with anger anymore, but with something like sorrowful understanding. She believed that attention was the same as love, that metrics could substitute for meaning, that the performance of connection was identical to connection itself. She was wrong, and that wrongness consumed everything she tried to build. I hope, wherever she is, that she has learned something. I hope she has found relationships that are not transactional, purposes that are not performative, a life that does not require an audience to feel real. But mostly, I hope she has learned that some things should never be content, that some moments are too sacred to share, that some people deserve to exist without being converted into entertainment. My wife is one of those people, and no viral video, no matter how many views it accumulates, can change that truth. This is what I want anyone reading this story to understand. Dignity cannot be taken by strangers who watch videos on their phones. It cannot be measured in likes or shares or comments. It exists independently of what anyone says or does to you online, and it belongs to you always, no matter what anyone tries to film without your consent. Eleanor taught me that. Or perhaps she reminded me of something I had always known but needed to see tested before I truly believed it. Either way, I am grateful. For her, for our family, for the quiet evening on our porch after our son's second wedding, for all of it. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the Astral Vengeance channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.